I should have known the moment he lifted the camera. The way he looked at me through that lens. Steady, unapologetic, like he already knew something I didn't want to admit. Can I get one more shot, Ms. Rowan? Just stay right there. It was supposed to be a normal Saturday. I was the event coordinator for a high-profile Austin wedding. An outdoor ceremony drenched in Texas sunlight. Champagne-colored dresses, men in crisp linen shirts, the skyline glittering beyond the rooftop. The kind of scene I could manage blindfolded. Control, that's my language. I run every detail, every timeline, every person. Nothing surprises me until him. He wasn't supposed to be the photographer. The regular one had dropped out last minute. When he walked in, tall, black shirt, half unbuttoned, sleeves rolled, camera slung carelessly over his shoulder. The bridesmaids actually stopped pretending not to stare. And he was young. Not teenage young. Early 20s, maybe. Confident, grounded, too self-assured for that age. He caught my gaze and smiled, like he knew I'd just noticed him. Tyson, he said, extending a hand. I'm covering for Jordan. Hope that's okay. Tyson. That name lingered, tugging at a memory I couldn't quite place. Fine, I replied, shaking his hand. Just stay out of the aisle shots. The bride's mother will skin us both alive if she sees a camera too close. He grinned, a flash of teeth and sunlight. Got it, boss. That grin shouldn't have hit me the way it did. But there was something about the way he said boss. Not mocking, not flirty, just seeing me. I brushed it off and moved through the chaos, fixing centerpieces, calming a panicked bridesmaid, cueing the band. The usual dance. But every time I looked up, I caught him watching me. Not like a boy eyeing an older woman. Like a man studying something he found beautiful and dangerous at once. When the ceremony ended, the rooftop glowed gold with late afternoon sun. Tyson was everywhere, kneeling for low angles, stepping back into the light, capturing the laughter and champagne spills. I watched him work, pretending I wasn't watching him at all. He had a steadiness I hadn't seen in years. Not the restless arrogance most young men carried. Something quieter, more deliberate. He caught me staring once, didn't look away, just raised the camera and clicked. Delete that, I said automatically. He lowered it, half smiling. You're the only one not smiling today. That's a crime. I'm working. Still, you should see what I see. That line, the nerve of it. It stayed with me for hours after the reception ended. By evening, the rooftop was empty. Tables cleared, laughter fading down the elevator shaft. I was gathering leftover decor when he appeared again, the sun painting his face in gold. You don't stop, do you? He asked. Not until it's perfect. He leaned against the railing, camera dangling from his neck. You know, perfection's kind of overrated. I used to think that too. Used to? I arched a brow. He shrugged, a lazy motion that still managed to look intentional. My dad used to say that about life. You can fix everything in post. He was wrong. That's when the name clicked. Tyson. Jordan's replacement. Jordan. No, it couldn't be. Your dad? I asked slowly. Who is he? He looked at me then, really looked. You probably knew him. He passed away 2 years ago. Daniel Cross. My throat went dry. Daniel Cross. My ex-boyfriend. My almost? The man I'd spent 2 chaotic years with before he'd walked away without explanation. I'd seen photos of his son once, a teenager with sun-bleached hair and a camera around his neck. No, this couldn't be. I forced a smile, trying to hide the sting in my chest. Small world, I said softly. He nodded. Yeah, I didn't expect you to remember him. I did. Too well. Tyson turned toward the skyline, the breeze brushing through his dark hair. The light hit him in a way that made my stomach tighten, not because of attraction, but because of the strange collision of time. He wasn't a memory. He was the reminder that time had moved on without me noticing. I should have walked away. Instead, I asked, why photography? He smiled faintly. Because he never looked at people the way I do. He shot scenes. I shoot truth. That silence between us wasn't awkward. It was electric. When he finally lifted the camera again, the click echoed like a pulse. Don't, I whispered. Why not? Because I'm not, I stopped. Not what? Not ready? Not allowed? Not supposed to feel anything? He lowered the lens, expression unreadable. You looked like you wanted to disappear. I just wanted to prove you were still here. That line hit deeper than it should have. I stepped closer, the sunlight falling across both of us. You shouldn't say things like that to clients. I'm not talking to a client, he said quietly. And there it was, the shift. The first crack in the composure I'd spent years building. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't reckless. He was seeing me, past the polished clothes, the clipped voice, the control. Straight into the part of me I'd buried when Daniel left. The rooftop felt too bright, too still. I turned away before I could say something I'd regret. I have to lock up, I said. He nodded but didn't move. Do you want me to send you the photos? Just the wedding ones, not the others. I paused. What others? The ones I took when you weren't looking. The air left my chest. Delete them. I don't think I can, he said softly. They're the only real ones I took today. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city hummed below, the late sun sinking over the skyline, painting everything in a honeyed glow. Then he stepped forward, close enough for me to feel the heat of him, but not enough to touch. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he said. It's just, you carry something, like you're always holding your breath. I guess I wanted to see what it looked like when you didn't. I should have shut it down. I should have reminded him who I was. Who he was. Instead, I just stood there, the light catching the edge of his jaw, the undone button of his black shirt, the small tremor I refused to acknowledge in my chest. Send them, I finally said. I'll decide later. He smiled, not triumphant, just knowing. Sure thing, Ms. Rowan, and then he left, camera swinging at his side, disappearing down the sunlit stairwell. I stood there long after, staring at the empty space he'd occupied, my heart beating too hard for reasons I didn't want to name. Later that night, when the photos arrived in my inbox, I told myself I wouldn't open them, but I did, and there I was, in every frame, laughing, unguarded, sunlight spilling across my face, captured too well, by the one person who should never have seen me like that. The realization came quietly, like the click of a shutter. This wasn't harmless anymore. I told myself it was curiosity. That was the lie I started with. When I replied to his email, nice work. We might use you again. It wasn't an invitation. Not really, except 2 days later I texted him, me. Do you have time to meet? I have another event to discuss. Tyson. Sure, but I think you mean coffee. I stared at the screen longer than I should have before typing back. 10 a.m. at Luna Cafe. Luna was all glass and sunlight, tucked between a boutique florist and a gallery that smelled of espresso and paint. I liked it there because everything felt curated. Precise, like me. But when I saw him waiting outside, black shirt again, sleeves rolled, camera bag slung casually over one shoulder, it felt suddenly too small. He grinned when he saw me. You're late. I'm 5 minutes early. Exactly. You don't do late. The way he said it, familiar, amused, unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Inside, the cafe buzzed with the weekday rush. I ordered my usual black coffee. He ordered iced with oat milk. Of course he did. Young people always did. We found a spot by the window where sunlight spilled across the wooden table, highlighting every small movement. His hands wrapping around the glass, his thumb tracing the condensation, the way his eyes held mine when I tried not to notice. So, I said, leaning back, you've been shooting long? He smirked. Professionally? A few years, personally. Since I was old enough to steal my dad's camera. Daniel again. The name hit like static. I looked away, pretending to scan the street. He was good at what he did. He was good at pretending he was fine, Tyson said quietly. There's a difference, I didn't answer. I didn't know how. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. He used to talk about you, you know. My chest tightened. He what? Not a lot. Just in these little moments, like when he'd get this look, nostalgic maybe. I didn't understand it back then. I forced a smile. That was a long time ago. Doesn't look like it. That stopped me. He was studying me again. The same way he had through the lens. like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "I didn't ask you here to talk about him," I said, voice sharp enough to re-establish control. "I know." His tone softened. "You just wanted to see me again." I froze. He smiled faintly, not cocky, just sure. "You can pretend it's business. I'm fine with that." There was no arrogance in his words, only quiet certainty, and that made it worse. I should have shut it down right there. Instead, I exhaled. "You're very sure of yourself." He shrugged. "You don't scare me." That line hit something deep and buried. No one had said that to me in years. I laughed once, low and incredulous. "You should be scared. I could eat you alive. I think you'd rather taste than devour." The silence that followed wasn't just charged, it was dangerous. The sunlight shifted, glancing off his jaw. My pulse thudded. I stood abruptly. "We're done here." But when I turned to leave, he caught my wrist. Not hard, just enough for me to feel it. "Tell me you didn't feel that." I looked at him, and everything inside me said to lie. But my body refused to listen. "Don't," I whispered. "You don't know what you're doing." He released me instantly, his voice quiet but steady. "I think I do," I walked out. And yet, by evening, I was still thinking about him. The way he'd looked at me like I wasn't some polished woman in her 40s holding everything together, but someone he wanted to understand. A week passed. I buried myself in work, convinced it would fade. Then he texted again. "Tyson, you left your scarf at the venue. Want me to drop it off?" Me, "I didn't." Tyson, "Then I guess I just wanted an excuse." I didn't answer. But when he showed up at my office door that afternoon, sunlight pouring in from behind him, scarf in hand, grin reckless, I didn't send him away. "Persistent," I said. "You say that like it's a bad thing." He stepped closer, eyes catching the golden light, and suddenly the air in the room thickened. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "You could have anyone your age. Someone easier, simpler." He smiled, not boyish this time, but real. "Maybe I'm not looking for easy." The truth of it unsettled me, because I wasn't either. He lingered by the door, the scent of cedar and sunlight clinging to him. "You know what's funny?" he said. "When I took those photos, I thought you looked untouchable, but the more I look at them, the more I realize. Every frame says you're fighting something invisible." He hesitated, then added softly, "What are you fighting, Amelia?" My name in his mouth felt intimate, like a secret he shouldn't have found. "I'm not fighting anything," I lied. He nodded slowly. "Then why do you look like you're about to run every time I get close?" Something cracked open. Maybe it was the years of holding everything too tightly. Maybe it was just the way he said it, without judgment, without pity. I stepped closer, close enough to smell coffee on his breath. "You have no idea what you're doing." He looked right at me. "Then teach me." It wasn't arrogance. It was surrender. The sunlight through the blinds striped across his black shirt, highlighting the undone collar, the soft edge of his throat. I shouldn't have noticed, but I did. My voice dropped. "This can't happen." He smiled faintly. "It already is." That night, I opened the folder of photos he'd sent again. I stared at one in particular, the one where I wasn't posing, just turning mid-laugh, my hair catching the light. I hadn't looked that alive in years, and I hated that he'd been the one to show me. So when he texted again, "Can I see you tomorrow?" I didn't reply right away, but I didn't say no either. We met again the next morning at Zilker Park. The sun was sharp, bouncing off the water, families everywhere. It felt safe, public, daylight, innocent. He had his camera again. "You said you wanted new headshots," he teased. I said I'd think about it. He smiled, adjusting the lens. "Think faster." I tried to resist, but the warmth of the day, the laughter nearby, the way he looked at me, it all dissolved my restraint. "Fine. 2 shots. Then we're done. 2? He grinned. "You'll last 5. He was right. Somewhere between the 2nd and 5th frame, something shifted. The air, the tension, the way his laughter lingered after each click. I dropped my guard. Just a little. When I reached for his camera to see, our fingers brushed. barely, and the world seemed to narrow to that point of contact. He didn't move. "Neither did I. You do that on purpose?" I whispered. "What?" "Look at me like that." He tilted his head. "How else should I look at you?" I should have stepped back. Instead, I took one forward, and when I looked up at him, sunlight spilling through the trees, the soft edge of his smile, I saw everything I'd tried to bury reflected back. It wasn't about age, or rules, or right and wrong. It was recognition, the kind that feels like standing too close to something bright. I ended it before it began. At least, that's what I told myself. But when he walked me back to my car and said quietly, "You don't have to keep pretending you're fine," it broke me in a way I didn't expect, because for the first time in years, someone had seen through the armor and hadn't flinched. As I opened the door, he said one more thing. "Next time, you don't need an excuse to see me." Then he walked away, sunlight burning across his shoulders, the undone button of his black shirt glinting like a secret I wasn't ready to confess. And I stood there, keys in hand, heart in chaos, realizing something terrifying and undeniable. I wasn't fighting him. I was fighting myself. The gossip came faster than I expected. Maybe it was inevitable. Austin's event circuit was tight, and people loved a story they could whisper about between champagne refills. The 40-something event director and the 20-something photographer. Too cinematic, too delicious not to discuss. It started as small talk. "He's talented. They seem close." Then someone said it. "Isn't he Daniel Cross's son?" And just like that, the ground shifted beneath me. Daniel's name carried weight, charm, and disaster all in one syllable. The man who taught me how to lose control and then made me regret it. Now his son was the one making me feel again. I should have known it would surface. Still, when I walked into Monday's planning meeting and saw the quiet smirks, the way conversations hushed as I entered, I felt the familiar sting of judgment. Power was my armor. But gossip was a different weapon. It found the cracks and slid through. That night, I drove without direction, sunlight bleeding out across the horizon. Austin's skyline glowed amber, glass, and steel, reflecting everything I felt. Exposed, fractured, too bright to hide. I parked near the river and texted him. "Me. We need to talk. Tyson." Finally. "Where?" "Me. My place. Sunset." When he arrived, the sky was the color of gold and forgiveness. He stepped through the doorway, black shirt, collar open, camera bag left behind this time. He looked older somehow, or maybe I was finally seeing him as he was. Not a boy, not a replacement for what I'd lost, but a man who'd chosen me despite the world telling him not to. "You heard, didn't you?" I said. He nodded. "Yeah. Then you know this can't go on." He didn't move closer. He didn't argue. He just looked at me, calm, unflinching. "Is that what you really think, or what you think you're supposed to say?" I turned away, crossing my arms. "People talk. They'll drag my name through every room in this city. You'll be the kid sleeping with his father's ex." He exhaled. "Let them talk. It's not that simple. It is if you stop caring." The quiet in his voice unsettled me more than any outburst could have. "I built a life that works," I said, my voice low. "After Daniel, I promised myself I'd never lose control again. Not for anyone." He stepped closer then, slow, deliberate. "Then maybe it's not about losing control. Maybe it's about choosing what's worth the risk." I looked at him. Sunlight catching the line of his jaw, his throat, the undone button I couldn't stop noticing. And for a moment, all my defenses felt like illusions. "Tyson," I whispered, "you don't understand." He cut me off gently. "I do. I understand what it's like to feel invisible. To keep performing the version of yourself everyone expects. You don't scare me, Amelia. You make me want to be brave." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. And in that silence, something shifted, not reckless, not forbidden anymore, but real. He reached for my hand, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. When our fingers touched, it wasn't lust that filled the space between us. It was recognition. "You make me forget to perform," I admitted softly. "That terrifies me," he smiled, small and sincere. "Then maybe it's the good kind of fear." For a few weeks, we tried to stay quiet. Mornings that started with sunlight through my kitchen windows. Afternoons where I'd find him editing photos on my balcony. Evenings where laughter replaced the noise in my head. It felt normal in a way that scared me. Because normal meant I could lose it. Then one afternoon, the world intruded again. Daniel's sister, his aunt, cornered me at a charity event. Perfect nails, polite smile, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Amelia," she said, voice dripping civility, "you really think this is appropriate?" I didn't flinch. "I think it's none of your business." "Maybe. But it's the talk of every boardroom from here to Dallas. Then maybe they should find better things to talk about." Her lips curled slightly. "He's young, impressionable. You of all people should know how that ends." I smiled faintly. "I do, which is why I'm not walking away." She blinked, caught off guard, then turned sharply and left. It was the first time I realized I wasn't ashamed anymore. Later that week, I found Tyson at his studio, a loft with tall windows spilling light across canvases, prints, and film reels. The air smelled of coffee and dust and summer heat. He was hunched over his laptop, editing, sunlight kissing the back of his neck. "Hey," I said quietly. He looked up, smile blooming instantly. "You came." I did. I walked toward him, my heels clicking softly against the wooden floor. "I wanted to see what you've been working on." He hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. It wasn't landscapes or weddings. It was me, every frame, laughing, thinking, staring out a window, sunlight across my face. I inhaled sharply. "You kept them all." "I couldn't delete them," he said. "They reminded me why I started taking pictures in the first place." "To capture people?" He shook his head. "To remember what it feels like to see something real." The simplicity of it undid me. He reached for my hand again. "You know, people are going to keep talking. They'll call it wrong. They'll make it smaller than it is. But none of them were there when you looked at me the first time. None of them know what that felt like." I swallowed. "What did it feel like?" He smiled softly, like being seen for the first time. That was when I realized love wasn't supposed to make sense. It wasn't supposed to fit inside approval or logic. It was supposed to wake you up. I leaned in, my forehead resting against his. "You really shouldn't say things like that to me." "Why?" He whispered. "Because they're true. Because I can't unhear them." He brushed his thumb across my jaw, sunlight pouring over us through the window. "Then don't." And for once, I didn't fight it. The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm of soft mornings and sharp laughter. The world still buzzed around us, full of opinions, but inside that sunlit loft, none of it mattered. He photographed everything. My hands, my coffee mug, the way I leaned against the balcony railing as the city glowed below. Each click of his camera felt like a promise. "I see you, even when you forget yourself." And slowly I began to believe it. I started saying yes more, to dinners with friends, to dancing barefoot in my living room, to living without rehearsing every moment. He didn't fix me. He reminded me I didn't need fixing. The last shoot we did together was accidental, a friend's engagement party at a sunlit vineyard outside Austin. He was behind the camera again. I was handling the logistics. It should have felt professional, safe. But every time our eyes met across the crowd, I felt that same pulse from the rooftop, the same electricity that started everything. After the party, as the sun began to dip and the sky turned apricot, he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Still think we shouldn't have happened?" he murmured. I leaned back against him, the warmth of his breath against my ear. "I think it was always going to happen, whether I wanted it or not." He laughed softly. "Sounds like fate." "No," I said. "Just timing finally being kind." Now, months later, When I think of that first photograph, the one where he caught me laughing without permission, I understand why it hit me so hard. It wasn't the photo that scared me. It was what it revealed, that I wasn't done living, that I wasn't invisible, that someone could still look at me and see light. He still takes my picture sometimes, always in daylight, always without warning, and when I ask him why, he just says, "Because you forget how alive you look when you stop trying to be perfect." Maybe that's what love is, not losing control, but letting someone hold the parts of you that never got to breathe. Today, the sun spills through our apartment windows, and he's developing photos in the kitchen sink, shirt half open, humming softly. I'm writing this, finally unafraid of who might see, because I've realized something simple and certain. I spent years managing every detail of everyone else's story. He made me remember that mine wasn't over, and in the end, that's what he really captured. Not my face, but my return to life. If this story pulled you in, if you felt every look, every pause, every heartbeat, then don't leave quietly. Hit subscribe to never miss the next forbidden, sunlit love story. Drop a comment. Tell me what moment hit you hardest or what you want her to do next. A like and share. If you believe love can rewrite your story, no matter the rules, your reactions keep these stories alive, and the next one might just be your favorite yet.